we're going to chat sport.
Okay.
We're going to chat a little bit about you first. Since we last spoke, I suppose, and then we're going to delve into a bit of sport.
Then, huh?
Yeah, a lot.
Fuck.
That was like,
It's like a lifetime.
I'm thinking of starting something in Vegas.
Yeah. Crazy.
Like that was like maybe, there's some ideas gestating.
Oh my God.
And now it's like we've got Underdogs, we've got like Kari has retired, we've got
Ricky.
all the people diverged on, like Khan's been to Vegas, Tola's left, Khan's left again, Ricky's been, you've had Dubai, you've had Wadapalooza, you've had like
COVID
Jesus, so much.
games.
Allison has moved. Yeah, like it's
everything.
crazy.
It's a lifetime of events that have happened in the last year? I guess it's been a year, a little over a year, right? We spoke.
Yeah. Is this what you had in mind? Is this like when you were thinking Vegas? Is this what did this kind of Underdogs and the camp and everything, did that kind of catch you out, or was this like, yeah, this is probably what I was expecting to happen?
No, it's just far surpassed. Really and truly, I didn't know, man. I when we moved here with Kari, there were so many unknowns, and it's so interesting that everything happened out of the pandemic. I mean, we probably never moved to Vegas if that's the case, with our affiliate in New York and being busy there. But then obviously when the pandemic hit and we moved out here, Kari came, and yeah, it was a series of events, especially with Danielle and Bethany moving, Maddie moving, Tola moving, and Nicholas was here for a while. And then, the Underdogs thing, I say it was, it's always been in the back of my mind, right? Like for years thinking of, well, I should do a program. And then in the other side of my brain was like, well, there's a million fucking programs. You know what I mean? Like, and it's crazy is, that really and truly, the guy who's kind of been helping me since the beginning, he's kind of my right hand and incredible coach himself. He's the head programmer at Invictus Boston. His name is Kiefer Lamy. And Kiefer, Kiefer came out, he's friends with Tola, and he came out last year to just visit, and he kind of saw the vibe, and when he left, he was like, you need to start your own program. And I was like, well, and I kind of had all these excuses as to why. And really, he just said, listen, you have something to say, and I know that people want to hear it. Like, I can tell you right now, you need to start your own program. And so then it just, it was like the snowball started down the mountain. And since then, it's been crazy. I mean, we're less than a year in existence. I mean, we didn't release our first program until May, so to think of everything that's happened as far as the visibility of Underdogs and, all the ups and downs. I mean, obviously West Coast Classic, kind of the pinnacle, and then the COVID stuff that happened at the games, which was, just a kick in the balls. And then, but I feel like we're in a great spot, and I feel like, I love Vegas. I love what we're doing here. Creating, the camp, and then, we just moved facilities to a bigger facility. So, excited about that. And, we brought on a director of operations just now, Jared Graybeal, who runs the Zalos games. And, so that's going to help immensely to help me kind of be able to focus on coaching and programming and doing the stuff that I love to do, and having someone to be able to really kind of drive the business, so man, it's been crazy. But it's all good stuff, I mean, it's all great stuff, but I would be lying to you if I said that I, foresaw this before we moved out here. I think it's been, it's incredible that it's all kind of happened organically, but at the same time, once it started to happen, then, I'm a dreamer, and I would say, a bit of a visionary. And then my wife is really practical, which is great because she reins me back in. Ash she's mad at you, by the way. She said she wanted to be the replacement today. But anyway, yeah, man. It's been incredible. We have some really big short-term and long-term goals to really make this a global brand and to, it's tough. I mean, it's a tough market, I mean, there's some, there's some monsters.
Like when you're in CrossFit, in the ecosystem or whatever you want to call it, it's very easy to get wrapped up, I think, and be like, oh, this is huge. And then you like kind of zoom out a bit and you're like, oh, actually it's not really comparatively as sports go. It's pretty small and it's pretty young, and you kind of forget that, I think. Okay, look, we'll talk about sport, the sport of CrossFit in a minute, but there's another couple of things I wanted to ask about. So like, one, I suppose two major events have happened for Underdogs this year. I think the two major spotlight events. One would be Kari retiring.
Yeah.
And I was curious, like, obviously as a person, like, you're very close to Kari. You've always been very close to Kari.
Yeah.
As a coach, are you like, no, like, come on, you've got, like you can go another year, you can go another 2 years or whatever. And then as a person, are you like, no, whatever's best for her? Like, was there any back and forth on it? Or were you just like, you just decide what you wanted me to do and tell me?
Yeah. I to be honest with you, of course, like as a coach, you just because the fact that she's a dream, I mean, she's a dream to coach, she's the ideal athlete for you to coach, right? I mean, somebody who is, just religious with their habits and unbelievably regimented and, pretty much listens to everything I say and wants the feedback and is just mentally tough and has all this grit. But honestly, man, like I kind of knew, and I kind of felt it and she deserves it. She deserves to do whatever she wants at this point. Like the toughest thing is just not having her in the gym every day. She's just such a light, she's just so awesome for everybody else. But the beautiful thing is she, it's really cool. This past Saturday, actually, she came, she sat everybody down. We had a little meeting and she talked about how she really wants to be involved with Underdogs and with the athletes, as far as mindset, as far as helping them with everything outside the gym. You talk about strategy during competitions. So she's really gonna help me as much as she can. Obviously, she's very busy with Power Abs, but as much as she can, she's gonna write some articles for Underdogs. She's going to do some blog stuff, just basic topics like for to help people with whatever, she's got so much knowledge to impart, but I wasn't, I can't say I was trying to convince her, and I, my sneaking suspicion is that's probably the end as far as individual elite competition, but it wouldn't surprise me in the future if you saw her jump back on a team. She's still pretty young. She's 32, and she'll still come in the gym. Now she'll cherry pick her workouts right now, but she'll come in the gym and she'll still dust everybody, on specific things. And it wouldn't take a lot, for her to, jump back in a couple months and ramp back up. So it wouldn't surprise me, if she came back team, and it wouldn't surprise me, once she hit the 35s, if she didn't want to do some master stuff. And, I think for her, it's a balance. She loves training. She's done it since she was 5 years old and competing. But I will say it's a blessing, that she is still part of the family and part of the environment. She loves Vegas. We love Vegas. I think she's going to be out here for a while. We're going to be out here for a while. So I think she'll be an important part of the Underdogs family for a long time.
The second thing then was, I suppose, like Ricky joining is like really thrust. So like, I suppose the two huge spotlight moments, like as in all attention on Underdogs, was the games and then Ricky. And then I suppose, I'm largely to thank for Ricky joining Underdogs.
Really,
it's basically,
you are responsible. It's you.
Yeah, like it's like, you know, essentially I'm like, I mean, if he, I don't know, if he gets some prize money in a competition, I mean, it's probably only fair that percentage comes my way.
I think
But
so
like,
too.
I mean, we can talk about that when
No
when the time
problem.
comes.
We'll figure it out.
So obviously, like we spoke about it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, but I messaged you saying, "Oh, congrats! Like that, you know, I think you'll do great. Like, you know, you're exactly the type of person he needs, basically." And then you were like, "Oh, it was actually because of your show that it transpired."
That's
and
true.
then, yeah, it was like you talked about it on a podcast, and he talked about it on a podcast. It's just funny, like it's funny being involved, but not being involved in something is weird. Like it was weird, kind of seeing him and be like, "Oh shit, that's me that they're
Yeah.
talking about."
Yeah. It's cool.
One of, I suppose, the most striking moments of like, fuck, that's a good partnership, ironically, came when there was no competition. So in my eyes, Wadapalooza, I feel like had you not been there and had you not been talking to him, that he could have really fucked up there and like, you know, had an awful 3 or 4 days. And I'm sure he didn't enjoy not competing, and I'm sure he didn't enjoy, you know, like missing out and stuff. But I feel like you were exactly the type of person he needed to be there to say, this is a really bad idea. You need to take a step back. Is that where you think largely your influence will be shown on him?
Yeah. Ricky is, I mean, the toughest thing there, right, is like, how do you tell someone who hasn't been able to compete for 4 years not to compete, right?
Yeah.
But Ricky is special. You know, he's got that rugby mentality. You know, he's just a run through a wall, and you know, it might not necessarily be the smartest thing sometimes, but one thing you know that the kid has is, you know, he's got grit and he's tough as nails. So, you know, I think right up until the last minute, I think he, in his mind, was like, I'm competing. And to be perfectly honest with you, after we left Dubai, you know, and obviously, I mean, his first competition back to podium, and, you know, I mean, he was right there in the mix with, you know, I would say the other three, right, with Roman and Lazar and Jeff Adler, and those, you're talking about guys who, you know, all three of them arguably top 10 in the world, right? And Ricky was toe to toe with them all weekend after not competing for 4.5 years. So I was very happy, and I think he was happy. I don't think he was satisfied. I think he felt like he left some points out there, but I mean, that's to be expected. First competition back for sure.
Do you have to calm him down, like say after day one in Dubai? Do you, because obviously like it's easy to get excited there when there's two strong event showings, and it's easy to kind of get to run away with yourself, and like everyone was talking about him and everyone was saying, oh shit, like, you know, it's legit. Do you do you step in at all there, or do you just trust him to be like, it's only events, like it's not the whole thing?
He's pretty
like, there's more time to go?
level-headed. He's pretty level-headed.
Yeah.
You know, he'll let his emotions, you know, he'll let his emotions loose on the competition floor. Sometimes you'll see him get excited, but man, he's super mellow and introverted, you know, like, outside of it. And, you know, I think he knew, like, listen, those two events were running events. I mean, he's arguably, I mean, I'll tell you right now, he's going to be tough to beat in a running event in any competition in the world. I'm not sure that anyone's going to beat him in a running event. You know, so I think he knew, you know, this isn't necessarily like mean that I'm going to run away with this thing. But down, once we left Dubai, we both got COVID, you know, on the flight to back, I'm assuming from Vegas. And he got it pretty bad. I mean, he lost like 10 pounds, you know, in a week, and wasn't really able to train. When he did come back, you know, and he was training here, and what I was watching was not the person that I had seen in Dubai. He was probably at about 50 to 60%, you know, and he was getting, and he only had 10 days.
So he was human.
He was human. Right. And the truth is, like, that day, that Monday, that was 10 days before Wadapalooza started, when he was able to get back in the gym and train. And, you know, I said to him, what are you thinking? You know what I mean? Oh, I'm going to be fine. You know what I mean? I'm going to be fine. And all the way up until we got down there, I think he in his mind was like, this is, I really, I want to compete. Once they say 3, 2, 1, go, I'm going to be fine. And then he got down there and he got food poisoning. And I feel like it was the universe. That's what I'm going to say. I feel like it was the universe that basically was like, listen, man, you just had COVID. You lost 10 pounds. You're not 100%. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean? And so the universe made my job very easy there. But yeah, I think for me, aside from obviously, the programming and being able to kind of help him as far as, strategically and bouncing ideas off me. I mean, he's pretty easy. Like he does his thing, and, especially with him being over in Australia. I mean, we check in and stuff, but it's not like, having him on site. But yeah, I think that, just having me, to be able to impart like some wisdom and in some cases, saying, hey, this might not be the best idea, or, we should do this or we should do that. I think that's important. I think it's good for him. And I tend to stay, pretty level headed with that stuff. But I'm also looking at it from a perspective of, what's in your best interest, not just at the moment, but also like, let's look at the whole season, right? You just came off of a podium, a podium finish, and to go down to Wadapalooza where you're not feeling 100%, you're nowhere, in my opinion, nowhere near 100%. To go out there and finish 14th, like what would that do for you? All it's going to do is have, the trolls just start picking you apart, and it's not the taste that you want to leave in everybody's mouth all the way up until Turin. You know what I mean? So I think it ended up fine, and he's back in Australia, and he's training, and he's I think he's finally feeling like back to himself after a couple weeks. And I think will you
go to Australia?
I would love to. It's tough because we also like that weekend is also a North American semi. So it all depends on how it times out. And also it's just, that's a tough trip. I mean, that's a hard trip to go for a really short period of time without my family. You know, I don't know, man. I would love to. But the other thing is he's got Benny too. So, what's nice is Benny can be my eyes and ears, and he and I can easily communicate for that weekend. So, it would be amazing. I would love to. It's certainly like in the back of my mind that if it's possible, but it depends on what's going on here with the rest of my athletes.
That's fair.
That's an incredibly busy time. Those several weeks are nuts, so so we'll see.
Okay, so what we're here for, sport. So I didn't realize, I interviewed Matt the other day, and God, I fucking love that guy.
Yeah.
He just texted me. I was saying to him, he's one of those where you're kind of like, I wonder what he's going to be like. I hope he's like this. And then he just blows that expectation, and you're just like, okay, he's way better than I thought he's going to be. I really, really enjoy talking to him. We
love him. Like literally, it's not just, you see people say like, oh, I love that guy. No, like my wife and I he's like he has become a member of our family. I've coached him now for a few years, but he is just as genuine a kid as you're going to get. Like,
I was bouncing after talking to him. I was bouncing. I was properly buzzing after talking to him. Yeah. But one thing he told me about that I didn't realize was that you coached him outside of CrossFit.
Yeah.
So you coached him in the IF3 or IF. So it came up, and I was like, hang on. So Justin has coached and worked in Grid, and he's coached and worked in IF3, and now he's coaching and working in CrossFit. And he was saying, and I was like, well, fuck me. If anyone knows about sport, it's going to be this guy who's done 3 similar but different, intersections of the Venn diagram or whatever. Like, I was curious, okay, if you look at CrossFit as a sport, like specifically the sport, not the methodology, not the training, just the sport, we're tip of the pyramid here, like we're right at the top. What do you think is present in CrossFit now, in its current iteration in the sport of CrossFit, that makes you like proud to be employed within that sport? Like, is there something in the sport of CrossFit now that you see as professional and like streamlined and well run. And we'll get on to what's lacking, but we'll talk about what's present first. Like, are there things in the sport of CrossFit that you think, yes, that's amazing?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. To me, as the father of a daughter who has grown up in the gym and has grown up watching Kari Pierce, Bethany Shadburn, Danielle Brandon, we have CrossFit, in my opinion, CrossFit, the sport, has altered the perception of female beauty. And what seemed like something that was abnormal before, where you had, women lifting weights, women, that was kind of on a fringe, has become so much more like part of our mainstream. And what I love is that these women are doing things for the next generation where Ivy just thinks that's normal. Like Ivy takes a look at that stuff and she thinks that's just essentially what, all little girls are supposed to do. Right. And so it has created this, strength is beautiful. This whole, in my opinion, what we're seeing with the generation of the younger generation that now look at these things as completely attainable and not something that's, on the outskirts of reality. So for me, like, I love that as a father, and I love to see that, how it's affected my daughter. And listen, obviously the what we see and what, as far as what CrossFit does, as far as pushing the limits of kind of superhuman ability, I mean, it's unbelievable. I think about like back to when I competed in 2012 and the numbers, back then that we thought were impressive. And now we see like, what's possible, and that's just going to keep getting more and more impressive. And I love the fact that what the sport does is it's constantly pushing human limits and what's attainable. And I find that to be so exhilarating. And, we tend to forget, like, we just assume because we have these athletes that do it every week. But if you sit down and you really think about what they're doing on a daily basis, like what I see in the gym on a daily basis, it's fucking crazy. It doesn't make any sense. It defies all the laws of strength and conditioning, like everything that we've ever thought was possible, right? Like they do it on a daily basis. I mean, I see it every single day. And the fact that CrossFit has essentially, in my opinion, like it really has, it's the driving force behind that, right? Now the methodology is awesome, but like, take just, your everyday CrossFitter who goes into the gym, like that's awesome. And usually, obviously it's phenomenal that they're fit and they're living a fit lifestyle, obviously. But what we're seeing from the upper echelon, from the top of the top, it's superhuman. It doesn't, it really doesn't make sense compared to what we've seen in the history of, like I said, of fitness or strength and conditioning. So that's what I think we do incredibly well,
It's interesting as well, like that. It's one thing that I think really does make it a sport where, like when you're watching, because I know you watch all sorts of different sports, but I know like if you're watching like soccer and you see someone like crossing a ball and you're like, oh, that was shite,
right.
Whereas like you're watching someone who's like immeasurably better than you are at something. And then I think in CrossFit, that's what makes CrossFit, that's what makes me think like this is definitely a sport, because I could watch people on the floor in Madison like, he didn't even go unbroken. It's like, I wouldn't even be able to lift the bar in the first place, it's crazy.
No, without question. Yeah.
What about lacking then? So if we talk about sport and we talk about professionalism and we talk about CrossFit reaching that measure, that mark of being a professional sport, what are the things that you think are lacking in CrossFit now?
Well, listen, it's still in the incipient stages, right? Like we're still really young as a sport, but obviously I think what I've always been an advocate for is creating athlete opportunities, right? Like, I want the athletes to be able to be athletes, right? You don't want the athletes to train and then have to coach 3 classes and then have to go pick up an extra job over here and do, so I think right now what we're lacking is essentially like enough, revenue generating opportunities for athletes. There's a really small percentage who are able to be full-time athletes and make enough money. And generally they don't make enough money from actual CrossFit competitions. It would be from sponsorship. So I think creating more opportunities for athletes to make money. I also think just professionalizing the sport, there needs to be more governance, right? I mean, and I think that will happen with the new regime. It seems to me like they're a little bit more open communication wise. I was lucky enough to be on one of the PFAA calls last week, and Brent was kind of explaining to us what the goal is and some of the topics that they're bringing to CrossFit, and that CrossFit seems much more open-minded now, which I think is great, because there needs to be an open line of communication. There needs to be, a union or some type of association that's advocating for the athletes, and I think we're seeing more of that now, and they do seem to have a plan in place, which is great. But ultimately, what I would love to see, are your maybe not your top 10 athletes, but the next 40 to 50 who would be able to make a living and be able to devote their time to training, because ultimately, what that does is it increases the spectator experience in our sport, right? Like, yeah. If it's a better quality product, and these athletes can train and devote their time to training and recovery and really, focus on their craft, then the product's just going to continue to get better and better and better and better. But they have to have the time to do that. They can't be part-time athletes. There's probably no other sport in the world where like the 40th or 50th best athlete, at least major sport, right? But like the 40th or 50th best in the world isn't able to devote their time to that specific sport. And I think it's tough right now where we're at. And I think it'll get better. But there are certain things, that I look at as far as, professionalizing the sport that we need to, there needs to be a lot of work done. And I think we're attacking some of those things, and I think they'll get better and better. And I've always been outspoken, and sometimes that got me in trouble with the previous regime, about, just certain things, as far as
like, are you talking about, like, say, removing some of the unknown and unknowable aspects, as in, like, if you turn up at the games, that there'll be cuts maybe more than 4 days in advance, or that there will be, like,
I just think cuts in general. Like, I have a problem with like minimum work capacity, right? Like you spend the whole year to get to the games, you travel from Australia and you get cut after spending $20,000 to get to Madison. Yeah. And then you get cut, like after day one. I mean, that type of shit, it just doesn't make sense. There are certain things that I feel like, I have a problem with athletes having to pay to get to the games, honestly. The best in the world, especially the individual athletes at that point in time, top 20, top 30 in the world, top 40 in the world. That's we need to figure out a way to take care of that. Like that, that has to. People can't lose money going to the CrossFit games. Like it doesn't. That doesn't make any sense. Certain. I mean, honestly,
like playing devil's advocate, does the CrossFit Games not lose money? Like, it's not a profitable machine. Then, like, it's hard for them to pay more, like, to lose more money so that the athletes coming. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I say Noble have come on as sponsors this year and they've paid $5 million, but that's a big punt on their part. Like, as in, that's a big risk, we'll say. And then, like, the CrossFit Games are it's been said numerous times by the previous and current regime that, like, it is not a profitable like that's why the likes of Monster and stuff are coming in, because it's like, okay, we need to actually make this into a money making thing rather than money losing. So is it fair to say like, okay, we're going to cover your costs for coming to, like say Rogue Invitational did. They gave a burst or whatever for money, but like you go to any gym in the world and look around, the whole fucking thing is Rogue. So like they have no shortage of money there. Whereas CrossFit is it's a different story. So do you think do you think that more change on the business side, we'll say, of the sport needs to occur before those changes, those aesthetic changes that we might see of like Daniela not having to pay for quarterfinals, not having to pay to get to Madison, not having to pay to stay in Madison? Do you think that there needs to be more business acumen shown first?
I think it works hand in hand. I think it's a partnership between CrossFit and the athletes, because who in my opinion, like who has the best opportunity and where does CrossFit have the best opportunity to drive the methodology? In my opinion, it's through the sport. It's through the visibility of the athletes. Making the athletes happy, they'll promote the shit out of your sport. So I think that there's got to be a way to create more of a partnership. And I think in the past, it's been a little bit more adversarial. And I think that there's a way for things to be more symbiotic. And, I'm not saying everything has to change overnight immediately, but I think these are things that we need to work towards, right? I think the relationship between the HQ at the games and the coaches has always been very adversarial. Like they've made it a fact to tell us, like, you guys are spectators with limited access at the games. And I think that the athletes have always felt a little bit pissed off about that. And that was something the PFAA talked about, like having the ability to have more interaction with coaches at competitions, like at least having a place for our coach to be able to watch us, and not having to buy a ticket. Like there are certain things that just, in what other sport are the coaches made to feel like second-class citizens, right? So there's ways that we can create, like I said, a more symbiotic relationship. And I don't expect it to happen overnight, but I think there are ways to start to take steps towards creating, a much more amicable relationship, And
when you were a coach in grade and IF3, like, is there a noticeable difference being a coach in those sports?
Absolutely. So like in grid, you were essentially like an NBA coach. It was, or an NFL coach, or it was as much, the coaches were put on a pedestal as much as the athletes were, and were treated with so much respect. And the IF3 is fantastic. Also, I have always felt, that, same idea. Like there's a lot of interaction. We're given a ton of access to the athletes during the competition. Now it's smaller, you know what I mean? So it's they're able to handle that a little better, but I still think that there are ways, listen, the coolest part of the games in 2020, that stage 2 was you got to see that the athletes and the coaches had a ton of there was a ton of access. Like we had a ton of communication throughout the entire experience. And I felt like that was cool. I felt like it was cool for you to be able to see it on TV. And like during the total, Kari's coming over to me and we're talking about, this is the strategy, this and that, where like, you're at the games and we can't even, by the time we're done helping them warm up in the warm-up area, by the time we try to get out to the actual venue where they are competing, there's no place for us to watch. We can't even get in. So most of the time I just end up watching on TV because there's no way for us to see
was there no spillover of access? Because I kind of thought, watching 2020, I was kind of like, okay, this will probably lead to a bit of change now, because they'll see the even from the media side, they'll see the benefit of having that relationship shown. They'll see that it's entertaining and whatever. So was it just revert? Like you didn't have any extra access to Daniela or whatever the next year? No.
No. Well, last year was weird because Danielle and I were quarantined the whole time.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically, I was with her. We were out in the barn. They stuck us, in what they call the barn, right? So we were away from everybody. But as far as like the actual venue is concerned, no, there's no more or less access. I mean, it's pretty much the same.
Okay.
So
do you kind of think that it might? Because I know you mentioned at the start that like when you were talking about Underdogs, you said there's some monster camps out there. Like there's some big entities. And like one of the things that's happened with that is the coaches have become like personalities within the sport. I've noticed where like Underdogs and you and like Proven and Shane and, you know, Ben has always been kind of ever present with comp train, but then you've got all these like different, you know, the training plan, you've got like JST compete, you've got all these different like, you know, groups, and they all have this figurehead who's at the front of it, the coach or whatever, who's at the front. Do you think that would lead to, or could lead to more, I guess, like coach power, or more as in like that they'll have, because they're famous themselves and not just the athletes are famous, that it will become a thing of like, okay, well, we probably need to utilize this, as in like give them the access that they need or want or deserve or whatever, because symbiotically like that will work well for us.
I hope so. I also think it's more interesting, right? Like I think that there are a lot of people who are interested in what the coaches bring to the table for these athletes, right? I mean, like I think a lot of people are interested in the relationship that I have with Danielle, or the relationship that, you know, that Shane and Tia have, other than, you know, obviously they're married. That's a little different, but like the coach athlete relationship, right?
Yeah.
Or the relationship that Max has with Noah, you know, or kind of behind the scenes, like being able to see some of those things. And I thought they did a pretty good job last year with the Miles to Madison series, obviously. You know, where we got to see a peek into some of those relationships. And I've been notified this year that they want to come and film us, you know, a little bit, and I'm sure that they're going to do that with some of the other camps. But I think in general, like, you know, it creates a better story. And sport in a lot of ways, right? It's entertainment. So if we're not seeing some of those things, I mean, it makes for better TV, right? It makes for, I mean, in general. Plus, I also think that there are a lot of aspiring coaches that would love to see, you know, kind of what we do behind the scenes. You know, how do you handle a games athlete? It's not easy, right? And not everybody's the same. There's, you know, an unbelievable amount of difference in personalities, and how you have to be a chameleon in a lot of ways. So I think it just makes it more interesting. I think it's better at entertainment. I think it's better for the athletes. I think that it makes them feel more comfortable. And again, I think it creates a better product.
Yeah. Well, even if you're watching the NFL, or if you're watching the Premier League, or if you're watching like Formula One, you want to see the pit crew, you want to see the bench, you want to see the manager. Like, are they strolling around? Are they arms crossed? Like, what's their body language? Like, that's part of the allure of different sports.
It's
as well.
exciting. Yeah.
One of the things that's come up, you mentioned the new regime. One of the things that's come up since they've come in is the Olympics, and potentially making CrossFit an Olympic sport. And like, I don't know, like I kind of think maybe I'm dumb, but I don't get it. Like, I don't get what the positives of that happening would be compared to the negatives of it happening, like in my own head. Like, I think of weightlifting as being an Olympic sport, and I think that so much of the extra attention that weightlifting is getting is because of CrossFit, and because it made it like more mainstream and stuff. And then you look at turning CrossFit, like you talk about turning CrossFit into a professional sport. Well, like if it's in the Olympics, it's not really a professional sport then. Like, as in it's, you know, it kind of stops certain avenues from being open, I think, or it closes them off and turns you into a different direction. Like, where, like, is it the type of thing, like, do you think that would have a positive effect on the sport of CrossFit, like taking the training methodology out of it? Obviously, like, the more eyes, the better, whatever, it's a new audience and all the rest. But like, do you think for the sport, is that a good move, or is that something that, like, there's probably better, more effective ways to spend your time and energy?
So CrossFit itself, like the sport CrossFit, it can never technically be in the Olympics because it's a private entity. And so the only way that we would get like fitness or functional fitness in the Olympics is through a nonprofit. So it would be through the IF3 that we would get functional fitness in the Olympics, and it would be called functional fitness. It wouldn't be called CrossFit. And it would look pretty different because there are certain parameters that you have to follow to get into the Olympics. The unknown and unknowable, they don't love at the Olympics. There has to follow some type of format, right? So if you know the IF3 and you see that the way that they've developed it is that there are 6 specific tests. and we don't have to get into
it's kind of like high rocks, like it's nearly like a repetitive.
Yeah, so you've got endurance, you've got mixed modal, power, strength, body weight, endurance, and body weight. I forget the last one, but it's like it's body weight skill. So essentially, like those topics, right? Like those specific,
hitters or whatever.
Right, exactly. That's always going to be there. Now, the workouts can change, right? The tests can change under those headings. So the events won't always look the same, but you know that you're going to get something in endurance. You kind of know what that's going to be, right? Strength, you know what it's going to be. Power. So it would look a little bit different in the Olympics. And to be honest with you, I think it would be a positive in the sense that, like you said, anything that helps to drive drive CrossFit or the sport of fitness, to me, is a positive. I just think I would love to see our sport continue to grow and continue to gain fans and continue to, to be able to create opportunities for athletes and money-making opportunities, and sponsorship opportunities. And there's no bigger stage than the Olympics. When you're a little kid, as an athlete, I'm sure, most of us at some point in time were like, oh, I'm going to compete in the Olympics. I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Like, I know when I was a little kid and I was playing sports, so I went on to play college athletics. But when you're a little kid and you're in your backyard and, I was, at certain sports or whatever else, there's a period of time where, you imagine yourself, especially watching the Olympics, you're like, oh my gosh, you're up there and you hear the national anthem, right? Or whatever country you're from. And it's just a goosebump moment. As big as the CrossFit Games are in our community, the Olympics are a whole nother level. Yeah. And selfishly, as a coach, like the thought of being able to coach at the Olympics, the thought of being able to represent your country. God, that would be something, I would,
a little Team USA tracksuit.
Oh yeah, it would be amazing. And I think it could only, I think it would only be positive. Now I don't think that there's a chance that's going to happen for several years. I wouldn't think that would be a possibility until, probably 2028, which is here in LA. And I know the IF3 is pushing. I know Gretchen is working hard on that. And there are, the politics and the hoops you have to jump through.
Oh, I can only imagine.
I mean, it's nuts. And I know a little bit about it, obviously, because I'm the head coach of the USAFF. So and we're the governing body of functional fitness in the US. So I've coached at a few of the IF3 World Championships, and so I'm a little bit, I have some knowledge on the inner workings of some of it, but the majority of it is like you submit and then you wait for years until they, and then if you get a dissent from weightlifting or powerlifting or bodybuilding or something in the fitness, they can basically ruin your path. So there's so much bullshit to deal with. I mean, I don't know if it'll ever happen. But to me, I've always said, I'm a huge fan of creating athlete opportunities. It's why I coached in Grid. It's why I coach in the IF3 and USAFF. It's obviously why I coach in CrossFit, aside from the fact that I love it. I love coaching. It's a labor of love for me. But anything that we can do to create athlete opportunities and drive the sport, I think, is a positive thing.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm conscious of your time constraints, so we'll circle back.
We got a few more minutes.
We'll circle back to Underdogs. If you look back on 2022, so say we're together next January, and you're looking back, what's a successful 2022 for? I assume number one is everyone who is eligible to compete at the games is free to compete at the games and aren't told on the day of, like, oh, sorry. I assume that's like pretty high up on the list. How would you mark success? Because I know, like, I've asked a few athletes this question, and you kind of like, I kind of feel bad saying, like, does not qualifying for the games, is that a failure? Like where's the line? Because I suppose a lot of it is out of your control, and like even more so on your part, like so much of it is out of your control because you're not even the person competing.
Yeah.
So how do you quantify success for Underdogs for this year?
I think you hit on the first one, right? Like get through the season healthy, be able to compete in all the competitions that you want to compete in, healthy, and ideally with your body as close to 100% as possible. But I think when you ask that question, I have to look at it from a few different perspectives. Like as a coach and as a coach of athletes, my goals for my athletes, right? So like I would look at it from that perspective where like we have specific goals that we want to hit this season for Ricky, for Danielle, for Matt, for Bethany, and a few of the other athletes I coach. So obviously trying to hit those goals, or as close to those goals as possible. That would obviously make us successful. My goal for Underdogs, the brand, right, is obviously to continue to grow and put out, programming that people really like and programming that helps people reach their maximum potential, and to help people. I think that's one of the biggest things that why Ashley and I both, got into fitness and got into CrossFit was to help people. And I feel like Underdogs is just, an elevated opportunity to be able to do that on a more global scale. So I think those are two big things. And then I think the other thing that we're trying to do is we're really trying, as far as like boots on the ground, really trying to create an environment here in Vegas, and an athlete facility and an opportunity for our athletes to strive and reach their potential. But also I think what we're going to start incorporating is we're going to start doing athlete camps, where we open it up to people around the world to be able to come in, and we'll bring in our, incredible coaches to be able to work with people, for a couple days and try to help them, as far as, trying to reach their potential, competitively. So I think we have several different, kind of things going on, but that's the way.
A lot of plates spinning.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. And so that's
before Tola moved to, Iceland.
Yeah.
One of the predictions I had was an Underdogs team, taking on the games this year. And then when he moved, I was like, kind of like, oh shit, maybe it's not happening then, because he was kind of one of the people I had earmarked. Yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah. So we were hoping to put a team together, but really and truly the team, it kind of stemmed on whether Kari wanted to compete this year or not. So when Kari was like, listen, I really want to take the year off, then it made it more of like, the reality was that it probably wasn't going to come to fruition. So Tola and I kind of had a talk about things, and he really wanted to go team this year. And then he got the opportunity to go to Iceland, essentially like expense free, right? Like to go to Iceland for the year. And I was like, dude, you crazy? You got to go. You know what I mean? Like it's a great opportunity for you. And so he, I was completely on board with that. He put his stuff in storage, and the plan is obviously that he's going to be there for the season. And then ideally the goal is that he would come back next year and we will put together a championship level team here. Now anything can happen, and who knows, maybe he falls in love with it over there and stays. But, there's no doubt that my goal in the long run is to, and I haven't been shy about this, is to have a footprint in the top 10 in every single competitive division at the CrossFit Games. So that includes team, that includes masters, that includes teen, that includes adaptive, and obviously elite, all 5 different, categories. Right now, we don't have that in the team. And you know, like I come from team, right? Like team
Yeah.
dynamics. Tommy Hackenbrook, who is one of our, coaches, who I work with. Obviously, Tommy's won 2 affiliate cups and coached another affiliate cup winning team. So we have that love for teams. We're going to come out with a team program in a few weeks. So that'll be pretty cool news. Myself and another CrossFit personality that I will not reveal yet. I'll tell you off air. But he and I are going to collaborate on a team program that I think is sorely lacking right now in the space. So we're excited about that, but yeah, it just didn't materialize this year. And then obviously with the opportunity that Con and Tola had, it was a no brainer for them,
Yeah.
and I was completely, on board with it.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. You're always like very giving with your time, but also you say a lot of interesting shit.
Oh, thanks.
So I suppose I'd probably be remiss in not asking, like, who's the athlete out there that you'd most like to coach now that you don't currently work with?
Oh, man. Oh, there are a few, honestly. But to be honest with you, the ones right now that I have coaches, and I really like those coaches, so I don't want to get myself in trouble.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But there are a few that I have been able to watch, in the last few months, being at a couple of these competitions. A few of the younger athletes that I'm just like, wow, there's a lot of talent coming up through the ranks, and it's exciting, and I would love to be a part of that. But I will say this: there is not a shortage of very good coaches out there right now, which is honestly awesome. Like it's exciting for me to say that I respect the shit out of a lot of coaches that are around right now. There are some that I look at, and as much as I love that athlete and would say like I would love to coach that athlete, I also say, well, you know what, they're in really good hands, and I'm happy to see that.
Yeah.
If I didn't think that was the case, to be honest with you, there are ways to kind of back channel, but in general, I think the sport's in a really good spot. We have some great athletes. We've got some really good coaches. I think the camps are really cool. You're getting to see a lot of these athletes train together to be able to constantly level up. And I think if we can, if the athletes can create a really great relationship with the new regime at HQ, that we'll be able to drive the sport really well over the next several years and continue to push it forward, which I think we would all love to see.
Yeah. God, what a great line to end on. That was almost like it was scripted.